Hey everybody. Today's lesson comes with an assignment on Schoology. It's a short 2 pieces of writing that you'll submit in Schoology to say, hey, I can do this stuff. And when we talk about, what stuff are we doing? We're talking about presenting text evidence. We've been talking a lot about presenting text evidence, and in this case, we're talking about the modern language association rules for presenting text evidence from verse, from poetry. Romeo and Juliet is written in iambic pentameter. It is poetry. And this example, which you can see, has been pre-highlighted. It's been pre-highlighted just to save some time, but here's the text. It reads like this. I'll read it as quickly as I can just so everybody has at least read it once. By the way, there's no topic sentence or concluding sentence in this. This is just flat out plain old text evidence presented. And it's about light references in the balcony scene that deal with love in the universe, or just light references anyway, images of light. The first piece of text evidence reads like this. It says, for starters, Romeo, apparently facing east, says, Juliet is the sun. And you can see there's a citation here. Looks a little bit different than what we have seen. We'll get to that in a little bit. The lead up. The sun is the basis for all human life on earth, just as Juliet is now the basis for all Romeo lives for. She's the center of his universe. This isn't the only light reference that deals with love in the universe, however. Romeo, hiding in the Capulet orchard, speaks passionately of Juliet's eyes. He says, that should be blue, of course, is an attributive tag. Two of the fairest stars in all the heaven, having some business, do entreat her eyes to twinkle in their spheres till they return. And as you can see, there's a space for the citation right here. Romeo suggesting that Juliet's eyes twinkle so amazingly that they could perform the job of the brightest stars in space. Attributive tag. He goes on to say, her eyes in heaven would through the airy region stream so bright that birds would sing and think it were not night. Citation. Finally, the love-struck Romeo implies that upon return to her head, her eyes would make her face glow so miraculously bright. Quote, her cheeks would shame those stars as daylight doth a lamp. I'm just going to take care of this attributive tag I forgot earlier. So, the two situations that we're dealing with here are text evidence that is either a partial or whole line, and text evidence that are multiple consecutive lines, as in this example, and this example. And what's happening right now is that this is situation one, where we have a single line or a partial line, and then this is situation two. This is situation two, just so you know. It's coming up in just a second. And this is also situation two down here. And here's the scenario. In situation one, where we're dealing with a partial or a whole line, you would just present that line as you would if it were prose, as if it were out of To Kill a Mockingbird or The Pearl. The only thing that changes is that now we have a slightly different MLA citation. In this case, it would be Shakespeare, the act, dot, the scene, dot, and the line. In this case, we have Shakespeare, act 2, scene 2, line 3. And in fact, I have the passage right here. And here it is, line 3, because here's 5, here's 4, here's 3. Juliet is the sun. I'll come back to that passage in just a second for some of the other citations and other lines that get used. Now, in situation 2, where we are borrowing multiple consecutive lines, the situation looks like this, where we use n-line slashes at the end of a line of verse. I'll show you that in just a second. And in this case, instead of just being a single line, it's like this line through this line, almost like you would with pages, this page to this page. So in this first example of situation 2, where we're dealing with multiple consecutive lines, I don't know if you can see or not, but this particular passage starts here. 2 of the fairest stars in all the heaven. Yep. Which, just for the citation's sake, it looks like it starts on line 15, 16, and 17. And you'll notice that at the end of heaven, in this comma, it's the end of a line. At the end of eyes, it's the end of a line. At the end of return, it's the end of a line after that period. And each of these lines begins with a capital letter. That's true all the way down. So when we talk about n-line slashes, we are just letting the reader know that even though we're writing in prose, we are presenting text evidence that has been written in verse. And in this case, at the end of heaven, we would make an n-line slash. It's on the keyboard. It's just Shift and the question mark button. At the end of eyes, this is the end of a line as well. And we don't need one here because we're done. We're just letting the reader know that we have 1, 2, 3 lines of verse that we are presenting. It's from the same act, Act 2. Still Scene 2. The only thing that changes here are the line numbers, which are 15, 16, and 17. So 15 through 17. Period on the outside. Period on the outside. Same thing happens here. This is a partial line. You'll notice it doesn't begin with a capital letter because it looks like this writer has borrowed right from the beginning. Here it is. Right from the middle of a line. It's on line 20, 21, and 22. 20, 21, and 22. Same thing for this. It's Act 2, Scene 2, 20 through 22. And I can tell based on the capital letters. Here's the end of a line. Here's the end of a line. End line slashes. Period on the outside. And last but not least, down here at the bottom, looks like we're dealing with 2 lines. You can tell because that's not a capital letter that it's this is starting at the middle of a line. Here's a new line of poetry. It's not even a whole line. And those lines come from, looks like 19 and 20. 19 and 20. 2, 19 through 20, period on the outside. So again, if you're dealing with one line or a partial line, you're just going to treat it like it's out of To Kill a Mockingbird or The Pearl, like it's prose. The citation changes, author, act, scene, line. And then if you're dealing with multiple consecutive lines, we're using n-line slashes to let the reader know that even though this paragraph or this essay is written in prose, we are presenting some evidence that is written in verse. And here's where the lines begin and end. Same thing, act, scene, lines. And that's true for the next 2 examples as well. Now this document is available in the Romeo and Juliet folder for resources, as is the upcoming classwork assignment that I'm about to assign. And you can use this as an example and just leave out just so that you can say, even though I haven't memorized these new rules for presenting text evidence, I can at least refer to them and practice until I can remember them without a whole lot of extra help. What else? I think that's about it. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. The next video is going to show you how to do your classwork assignment and submit it to Schoology. But those are the MLA rules for presenting text evidence from verse, such as Romeo and Juliet.